Hello, and welcome to this webinar. I am Milind Katti, COO and co-founder at DemandFarm. The topic for us today is role of technology in changing the way key accounts are planned and managed. I have with me a panel that's very varied in its experience and expertise, but very closely connected to the key account management. My first guest is Gregg, Vice President, Strategic Accounts at the QT Company. We also have amongst us McCarthy, Senior Business and Technology Consultant at Duke Energy. And we're very pleased to have Bradberry, Principal Analyst and Executive Advisor, B2B Sales at Forrester. Thank you and a warm welcome, gentlemen. Let's begin. So actually, personally, as well as at DemandFarm, we obviously don't have any doubt that key account management will transition from being just data-driven to analytics-driven to including AI-driven as we go. So the human machine can kind of complement with each other very nicely, something that I read in an HBR article some time ago. It kind of stuck in my mind. So the higher abilities of machines in terms of scaling, in terms of speed, in terms of quantitative abilities, can all help the human account manager in her superior cognitive skills, right, of creativity, teamwork, leadership, and social skills, and so on. So I don't think the argument is anymore about one versus the other. It's more about humans and machines now, and then we tend to live with that already. So, but bringing this into the context of key account management is something that I kept asking any expert, any CRO, any sales leader that I met, any account manager. Okay, how do I bring this in the context of key account management or in the context of account managers? So how can this data can be leveraged to make them more effective is something that's been in my mind for a while. So so today's panel really consists of the right people to really deliberate on this. So we have Joshua from the QT Company. He leads a team of account managers, and then they sell very complex technology solutions to some of the world's largest brands and enterprises. And he's been an account manager himself. So he's been coming from the practitioner's mindset today in our panel today. And we also have Michael from Duke Energy. For a couple of decades, Michael's primary job has been to leverage whatever the available technology to equip sellers with the best ammunition that he can. So he's been using the available technology to help sellers for a long time now. And then I've also seen him in action at Duke Energy, at least for the last 7-8 months. And we, of course, have Rick from Forrester. He's been covering this space as an analyst, the key account management space, very closely for quite some time now. And he talks to and helps many organizations to get the digital key account management right. So we have an analyst, we have a sales technologist, if I may call, and we also have a sales leader and a sales practitioner in this. And all of them have worked very closely in the area of key account management. So we can't really get a better panel than this. That's what is very exciting to me to discuss the usage of data, usage of technology. How do we see this in the key account management space in future? So that's the preamble that I want to kind of set up today. So what I'll do is I'll like to open the discussion today with Rick. So there has been a lot of studies, Rick, wherein many B2B sales interactions today are taking place in the digital channels. Forrester's own report last year in Sales Enablement report talked about 60% of post-COVID. So 60% of B2B sales channel typically happens before even meeting a salesperson, right? So on the digital channels. So this is a huge shift in terms of sales organizations trying to adopt to this new condition of data-driven B2B sales. So I just wanted to pick your mind on that. What have you seen? How have you seen this pan out?
Great, thank you. It's a pleasure to join the panel. And certainly COVID did change a lot of what we do in terms of sales or account management and interacting with customers. And I would say that COVID actually accelerated a trend that had existed before the pandemic, and that was a preference that buyers had for self-service experiences. And there's a lot to that. We've sort of grown up now in this world of being able to click and transact. That started in B2B e-commerce for consumers. It went from physical products to digital products and experiences. It then came into B2B and created this SaaS movement, and was amplified by mobile technology and social media. And we just now live in a different world. We can click a button and have an experience. And so why do we need to still architect experiences with customers the way we did 20 years ago? That's sort of the mindset of a customer these days. And so this shift to self-service is one aspect. Technology, though, is the second pillar in this, and that is there are enabling capabilities that produce these new experiences and create preferences. So consumers, or in this case, B2B companies, buyers and users of B2B products, now look at that and say, well, I not only prefer to do it, but I can do it because there's an enabling technology or experience that allows me to do so. And then the last point I would say as we kick off the webinar today is the expectations on leaders to deliver experiences with customers have changed as well. So boards and CEOs are very much focused on how do we deliver the type of self-service experience using technology that our customers really prefer. And that's where insights becomes a new mantra for leaders to deliver experiences to customers, because you need insights to drive how you think about your people, your process, your talent, and the way that you run your business from that.
Yeah, very interesting actually. So lot of account managers, whatever the signals that they were able to achieve in what they called as like walk the corridor, is now the corridor is the digital internet, right? So they need to look for the signals there and not necessarily walking the corridor. That's what I guess changed. So Michael, would you want to add on to what have you seen? I mean, with your salespeople in terms of lot of buying signals or the buyers' interactions happening much before they actually reach out to the salespeople.
So we've seen really a separation from what I would call opportunity management and account management, which is, I think, more delineated now than perhaps it used to be. And in order for our account management to work successfully for our team, there's almost an invitation from the buyer to become a trusted advisor within that organization. If we don't get that invitation and we can't become the trusted advisor at the account level, then really all we're doing is opportunity management, which brings us to a totally different conversation than we're going to have today. So first, thank you for inviting me to add my commentary in this group. I'm looking forward to learning from everyone as well. Within the key account management practice that I find myself in from a sales enablement perspective, sales enablement is being pulled and pushed more and more to deliver influence for the sellers that they can use to become that trusted advisor. And in order for us to be successful at that, we need to be able to very quickly create insight that the seller can provide at the account level, that the account can then, the buyers within the account can then use to make decisions. If we're not providing good insight for our key account management activities to our sellers, they don't become trusted advisors, and we miss out on the ability to grow our revenue substantially within a key account management practice.
Thank you, Michael. So, Josh, would you want to add to this? I think, some of the technologies that you actually sell is to make more companies digital, right, in their interfaces, etc. So, I think I'm very curious to hear from you as to how have you seen that change in terms of buyers interacting more using digital channels?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for inviting me. It's great to be on the panel with these guys. I agree with everything that the two guys have said, Rick and Michael. I think it's been an interesting time, obviously, with COVID. Pre-COVID, I feel like there was resistance to technology, although most of it existed already. It's just that there was kind of resistance to it, and the resistance was difficult to counter because it had worked for such a long time. I think we were kind of sprinkling in new technologies and new ideas, and COVID kind of forced that resistance away. And it became kind of fluid. It became much easier. It was the only way to do business was by using technology. And, I think it took probably a 10-year jump in a couple of years. And I think that's great. I think now that the challenge we face is how do we capitalize on all the new technology and all the opportunities to use, insights and different things. And at the same time, kind of remember where we came from and remember that kind of relationship side of the business and the people side of the business and being trusted advisors. And I think that the most successful people in account management going forward will be able to leverage both of those skill sets in a very effective way. And I think that's kind of the challenge we have now is, you've got people that were around before pre-COVID, and they are kind of, really exploring and learning and seeing the value in new technology, which we'll talk about a bit later in this discussion. And at the same time, you've got people that were kind of just coming up during that time frame that really don't know any other world. And you kind of have to, kind of sprinkle back in that personal side of the business. And I'm constantly kind of fighting this discussion around being in front of customers and not being in front of customers and, using these tools and systems and processes in a more effective way. So it's exciting and it's a great challenge to have, but it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Josh. So just continuing with you on that, Josh. Of late, and I'm hearing a lot of this debate in terms of, so apparently the customer insights is winning over the myths. I mean, basically the sales insights is winning over sales methodologies. So there's a lot of talk in terms of there's a mind shift that we need to make in order to make these organizations. So how you as a sales leader are trying to make this shift?
Yeah, it's a great question. For me, as kind of an old guy, I really remember, no technology, not using any CRM and kind of doing account planning on Excel spreadsheets. And then we kind of got really fancy and started using PowerPoint and Word documents. And, we went from the bar napkin to PowerPoint pretty quickly. And to be honest with you, we just kind of became faster and more effective. I don't know that we got any better throughout that phase. And then now with technology entering in and these insights coming in, I think we're actually getting better as well and not just faster. The challenge we face is trusting the data. You have to have good data. And when you're getting insights and you're getting information from your CRM or your account planning tool or whatever that system might be, being able to really trust that data is accurate and use that data effectively, because if we're going to lean on it, we absolutely have to believe it. I think that there's a lot of tribal knowledge that goes into kind of the methodology piece of selling and account managing. And now that that's becoming less and less important, it opens up a whole nother world for us. It opens up, I think, the opportunity for people to get into this discipline a lot sooner in their career, because I think they can use technology to really close that gap where it used to take maybe 15 or 20 years of selling and different roles within an organization to kind of get into that sweet spot that I think is a sweet spot, which is strategic account management. Now I think you can do that much faster. So how do we teach people, coach people, develop people to develop those skills that used to take 20 years and, 5 to 7 or even 10 years, and then sprinkle that technology in and make them even more powerful and more effective, which I think we're seeing it happen. It's just, as a business leader, that's my challenge, is making sure that we have kind of a mix of people that, have a lot of experience and people that might really be able to leverage that technology and kind of putting them together. I believe in kind of a team of teams concept where we manage through teams, and it's not everything kind of comes through me or through a system, but we kind of help each other and manage each other. And I think that's really helping us to accelerate that process quite a bit going forward. And I think also kind of last thing for me is you have to embrace the assist. It really is an assist. It really is getting the technology and the insights. If you embrace that as not replacing what we have now, but actually helping us to be more effective and better. And actually, you know, I think, like Michael just said, becoming more of trusted advisors to our customers and having more data, more information we can share with them. A lot of times we understand their business more than they do, better than they do. You know, we like to share our account plans with our customers and kind of walk through them with them. And it's amazing to see how much insight they get from actually seeing our view of their business. And there are always a couple of instances where they say, hey, that's not quite right. And there are a couple of instances where they kind of look at each other across the table and say, man, that's actually right. I had no idea that we were doing it that way, which is always kind of an interesting moment. And I think that if you have the data to back that up, it makes it more compelling as well.
Right. Yeah. So just to follow up on that, Josh, so earlier, if I say that they're mostly right. So if I had, say, 100 account managers, around probably 20-80 rule, or 20 to 30% of them were like really these heroes who manage some of my best of accounts, therefore, anyways. It took a long while to get the remaining 80% up to speed for some time. So have you seen technology make these heroes and the rest of the guys, maybe the rookies, collaborate using technology, and then probably a sense of capturing the heroics and then making everybody much faster in terms of becoming better?
I'm sorry. Yeah, absolutely have. I think it closes the gap quite a bit. Like I said, you can get people to that point earlier in their career. You can get people ramped up faster. You know, one of the challenges in account management historically was if somebody exits the business or retires or whatever happens, replacing that information, replacing that tribal knowledge, like I said earlier, was an absolute nightmare. And it took forever. And now with technology, as long as everybody embraces it and understands that their job security doesn't come from what's in their head and what they only know, but it actually comes from their performance and their ability to help customers move forward and innovate better, then I think people get very comfortable with it. And then you can, you know, I'm even finding that I can move people around in different verticals and managing different accounts much more fluidly than I was in the past. And I think that gives me a lot of options as a business leader to kind of leverage my resources across the business much more effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Josh. So continuing on that, so I want to get to Michael. So Michael, I mean, you tried. I mean, your job is to kind of make a lot of sales process automated and then make it a lot more data driven, etc. over the years. And then one of the inherent things, especially with the salespeople, is the change management. So how do you make them adopt? How do you convince them, etc.? I think you might have done this successfully multiple times. And so what are the key things? I think whenever I speak to a lot of sales leaders, I say, hey, I think I like your tool a lot, but I'm not very sure how do I make this work for my salespeople. I mean, you know, so they don't like too many tools. So any tips, anything? How do we make this transition happen with the sales teams?
So good insight from the standpoint of the change management that is associated with it. So within the company where I work, we have a center of excellence for change management. And all of us that are working on change management activities go through an understanding of what is change management and what are the expectations for leaders and practitioners in order to move from one place to another place through a change management environment. And we find that that's very helpful to understand how that change management works. So within the transition to automated data-driven sales processes, it's difficult. And the reason for it is salespeople live on the edge of being agile. And so when you start to put together this concept of process for a salesperson, I think they're salespeople because they kind of push back against process. They need to be able to think on their feet. They need to be able to go fast. And in sales enablement, when we start to try to standardize it around certain data and processes, I think that they reasonably push back. I think it's in some cases a good thing. But we do want, in order for us to have a single message or at least a unified message out to the industry about what we sell and how we succeed, we do need to be able to provide some data-driven sales processes. So what we try to do within our sales enablement team is to keep a few points in mind. First of all, we know that salespeople need to be more data savvy. And they need to be able to understand that data is not useful for the simple availability of data, but they need to be able to understand how to use data to create that trusted advisor position. In other words, they need to be able to push through data and pick data that is going to help them in the customer's eyes, and not get overwhelmed by too much data. The other issue that we have in sales enablement is that data needs to be conversational. We all have this data that is reporting or dashboarding centric, and it's not necessarily conversational. So if I'm a seller and I go in with my data and I say, here's a point to my buyer, and it looks like a piece of reporting data, the answer from the buyer is usually, so what? And so we need that data to drive a conversation. That's really something that we try hard to accomplish. The next thing is that within the automation of providing data, we need to be able to consolidate data into one or very few places. In other words, if I have to give a list of URLs to my salespeople, the salespeople will go to Outlook and then stay there, and then all of the work I'm doing in data will be useless or futile. And so we need to be able to provide the same kind of experience they have in Outlook, which is do everything there that they think they need to do. And we need to provide that in a data aggregation perspective as well. We try to do that in CRM. Sometimes we succeed and sometimes we fail. And the reason for that is some of the data providers don't integrate very well into CRM. And so you can start in CRM, but then you have to extend out someplace else to get the real data. The other thing that we find is that in order to transition into data-driven, the sales leaders have to use data in business reviews. We have an issue a lot of times where the sales leaders use PowerPoint presentations, or they allow their sellers to bring PowerPoint presentations into a business review, and they never open CRM, or they never open a piece of data that we put into some kind of an insight-driven dashboard. We need sales leaders to use the data in the format that we're presenting it. The other thing that we find is that a lot of the data that we bring is us-centered. Here's a process, here's how you get approvals, here's how you move through the process, here's your sales process. But we don't do very well, or at least I don't do very well, in providing data that is customer journey or buyer journey focused, so that when the seller finds themselves in the middle of a buyer journey, but they're on defense, I don't know if I do really well to provide the data that needs to get the seller off defense and back into a conversation. So you can see that we've got a lot of points that we keep in mind trying to do this transition.
Right.
It might be as simple as sales enablement needs to be an interpreter and provide the language needed by the sellers in order to make that data conversational. That's just a few of the things. This is difficult. It requires professional practice in order to be successful. And I think we're moving in the right direction from the standpoint of this transition. But we need more time, and we need more prototyping in order for it to be more successful.
Right. So, and just out of curiosity, have you seen any trend in terms of this adoption or this change versus the sellers of the previous generation versus sellers of the current generation, like anything between millennials and then after that and so on? Have you seen that change?
We do see a difference between the ability of different people to be more data savvy or less. It has very little to do with the amount of years that person has in the selling industry. It has more to do with their disc profile, whether or not they're going to be able to accept change. So we know which disc profiles are better sellers and which disc profiles are terrible sellers. And so when we hire new people, we try to hire them with disc profiles that will allow them to succeed based on what we understand about disc. That comes along with the ability of that person to acquire new knowledge rapidly, and the ability of that person to change their behavior based on that new knowledge.
Yeah, thank you, Michael.
You know,
I think that's it. Yeah, Rick.
I was going to jump in. You know, much of that is generational. Each generation in the workforce today brings a different perspective about work and a different comfort level with digital capabilities. And that is true of both the buyers as well as the sellers. And so you get this interesting mix, right, of culture within a selling organization of how it should be done or what tools should be accomplished. I actually pulled a little data just for the webinar to look at that. And when you look at buyers, so we'll come back to the buyers, when you look at purchases made through websites, internal app stores, external marketplaces, or right within the product itself, depending on the type of product that you sell. So we'll just call that self-service. An average Generation X buyer on an initial transaction would look to do that 37% of the time. But when you go all the way to Gen Z, our newest and youngest buyers in the mix, it's 10 percentage points higher. So 47% of the transactions that generation, nearly half, they would be willing or prefer to do in a self-service mode. And when you look at renewal transactions, which is where we're focused today in this webinar, the percentages hold, and they're actually a few percentage points higher. So that Gen Z buyer is going to clock in around 48%, a millennial around 43%. So that's the sweet spot range of newer buyers, 43 to 48% doing transactions in self-service mode. It's really impressive.
Right. Thank you so much, Rick. I think bringing that. Yeah, Josh.
Yeah, just sorry. I good stuff, Michael. I actually thought of about 3 more sessions we could do on some of the things you said in your statement there. You know, one of them, I love the your line about making data conversational. That was a great way to say like how I spend a lot of my days with challenges. I mean, you could write a book on that or do a whole session on that, and I would tune in because I think that's a very interesting topic and very relevant too. But I also think that I think the disc profiling stuff is super important. I do a lot of work with disc profiling, but I also I like to build teams with very, very different disc profiles involved in the teams, very diverse teams. For me, it works with my management style. It works with the kind of customers we're doing business with. And so for me, that there really isn't a type. It's just knowing what their type is very useful for me. And then I think using data alongside of that is very important. I think for me, the adoption rate is really high for all disc types if you can find out what motivates them. If you can find out what motivates the buyer and you can find out what motivates the seller, then change management becomes almost, I don't want to say easy because it's never easy. Our business is growing so fast and our industry is changing so fast that change is constant. So it almost becomes a non-issue for us where, you expect there to be change every single day, every single month, every single quarter. And I kind of like that environment. I think some people probably wouldn't like that environment because there's a lack of kind of stability and kind of how you do your job every day. And when I'm interviewing people and onboarding people, I spend a lot of time talking about there is no normal. And I think, some people are really attracted by that. And you can almost see their body language when you say that. But some people are really attracted by that and some people aren't. And I think for people that aren't, then there are probably jobs out there that make more sense. If you like change and you like that dynamic way of doing business, then I think, this could be a good place for you. And I think the more data we have, the safer we feel in that process because we can always back up with data. So even though things are changing every day, we can always look back and see kind of how that evolved over time. And then I think, the next topic here we're talking about is how do we use that same data to look forward? And I think that's where it becomes incredibly powerful.
I was looking at a company yesterday that was founded in the late 1800s. And as I looked at their timeline, within the last 10 years, they made as many major corporate changes as they made in the previous 50 years. I found that to be amazing from the standpoint of the way change is evolving into there's no like Joshua said, there's no normal. It's just all change. That's the normal.
Yeah, yeah, right. So coming to, so our viewers would like to kind of understand something very specific in terms of tools around digital key account management, digital CAM journey. I would like to open with Rick, wherein he want him to give us a sense, okay, what are some of the tools that you've seen making this transition for the account managers to get digital? Generally overall as an industry, and then I will go to Mike and Joshua to kind of talk about specific tools that they might have been invested in or been using. So Rick, you.
Yeah, what I love about this space is all of the things that we've traditionally done in key account management, it's all just being digitized and improved at the same time. So you can go right down the list of capabilities and it's going to mirror what you've probably always done in this function. So now with technology, you can look at this and do both, use quantitative and qualitative insights to better understand and serve your customer. And if you do that well, that leads to better long-term value. It leads to larger deal sizes, better forecast accuracy. Like you're going to be really motivated to do this because those are things that we all struggle with when we manage accounts. So looking at deal white space, deal size, improving all of those metrics that go with it. Like those are capabilities that are being embedded in the technology, and they're getting better because there's that artificial intelligence component. There's a lot of analytical tools being built into the algorithm that, let's face it, we as humans, we're just not capable of doing that kind of number crunching and insight crunching fast enough. That's what's coming at us. And it's going to improve the function for account management leaders in a big way. It's a really exciting space to be in.
Yeah. Thanks, Rick. So Josh, any specific tools that have impressed you in terms of helping your account managers become savvy in this age?
Yeah, I mean, we use obviously our CRM and the accompanying tools that kind of go along with that help us with kind of modeling and data analytics. And I don't have a full-time person on my team now that manages that, although I would like to have one. I could definitely find use out of somebody that all they did was provide us with data. And I think from an enablement standpoint, that would probably be as effective as anything. You invest in all this technology, you invest in all the systems and tools and processes and all that kind of stuff, but the fuel for that is the data, I think. And that's what keeps it going. That's what makes it more profitable. I think that's what makes it more exciting. We do a lot of account pressure testing and plan pressure testing, and we share a lot of that data. We collect a lot of that data. We find out that a lot of people are making the same mistakes, are thinking about things the same way. And it's typically they're thinking about things much smaller than they should. Our mantra here is think bigger. And it's always, no matter what you're thinking, just try to ratchet it up one more level and you'll never run out of headroom. There's always an opportunity to think bigger. And I think customers really appreciate that. And I think that the tools that we use today allow us to back that up with data. And they also kind of challenge us to think bigger. And we can kind of compare and contrast. We manage 84 customers globally in our strategic account program here at QT. And that's a lot of customers. Most companies haven't heard of us, but almost everybody's heard of our customers. So, we're really trying to kind of leverage that across all of our business. And we are a relatively new program. We're 18 months into what's probably a 5-year journey easily to kind of build this thing out to make it world class. And for us to kind of close that gap as quickly as possible really requires great talent. And then backing that talent up with great systems and tools and just as much data as we can get our hands on.
Right, Josh. Yeah. So I'm sure, I knew when I used to go to SAMA in the past, and even very recently, they say, okay, there's a mature program, they said 10 years. I said, okay, who has that kind of a time nowadays? So you got to mature your CAM probably in 3 years or 4 years. And probably now that there are technologies available, it will become possible, I guess. So, yeah.
But
so Mike,
it's interesting because, I'm sorry, it's interesting because as the program matures, the returns actually go down. I find in the first 2 or 3 years, your growth is higher than it is in years 5, 6, and 7. It just kind of stabilizes and you're managing usually a bigger chunk of business and you're moving it forward. But, the first couple of years are really where you see your biggest gains. in my experience. So being able to capture that and build energy around that is really important to continue the investment and continue, you know, kind of the strategy going forward. And I think this can help us do that too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So Michael, so some of the tools that you've, I mean, this thing has been very, very interesting to me. So, so what are the tools that you leverage for your key account management digital journey?
So we've had a multi-year experience with digital tools at Duke Energy. So let me give you some of my observations. I can't speak for Duke Energy, but I can speak for myself and how I feel about these things. So digital tools, interestingly enough, started with Microsoft Office 365 for us as we started to move from a server-based environment to a software as a service-based environment. And just capabilities of Office 365 have helped us in our key account management journey. But that's not what you want to dig into. We've been using Salesforce at Duke Energy for a long time. And one of the things that happened last year was the vice president of sales said to me, can't you just make CRM into CRM and not a reporting tool? So I spent a lot of time thinking about that last year and came up with a list of application purchases that are integrated either natively or as managed apps into Salesforce, put those in front of him, told him it was a huge investment, and he agreed to every one of my recommendations to bring these new tools in order to make CRM into a CRM. One of the things we brought in was DemandFarm for our key account management. We felt that DemandFarm was really powerful in this area of creating the buyer relationships amongst themselves and being able to visualize that, whether the relationships amongst the buyers were either negative or positive. We needed to know that. And in a lot of cases, we were picking champions out that had a negative influence on the decision makers and losing deals because of that. And now that we have been able to bring in DemandFarm as our digital CAM tool, we're able to actually let our sellers experience and show that. So on a normal account for us, we have 5 to 7 sellers, and we have 10 to 12 buyers. And so for us to recognize those relationships is really important. And that was really hard for us before. We talked about white spaces and DemandFarm from key account management. Most of the customers we deal with have multiple locations across the US. We don't deal outside of the US, but we need to know whether or not we should call on their account in Iowa versus their account in New York City and why, because the costs are so different to deal with those different locations. So we see DemandFarm as really key to our journey in key account management. But we have more. We have another tool that we purchased called XIQ, and XIQ is an artificial intelligence engine that searches social media and helps us understand DISC of our different buyers. It also helps us with some account-based triggering, but primarily what we're trying to do with that is to use it for its DISC analysis, which is AI-driven. It also provides us with the indication of whether our key account manager is going to be successful just on a purely DISC level with a buyer that's a decision maker. What we're hoping is that our seller doesn't have a DISC profile that's just too far away from the buyer. And in that case, we team different people up with our key account manager. And then we utilize information from DemandFarm to show whether we're changing our influence relationships between our sellers and buyers based on that better knowledge. So that was a really important tool for us. And it was something that we had to really decide to invest in. We use LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which interfaces with DemandFarm. So when we're creating those relationships, we can turn on LinkedIn Sales Navigator into DemandFarm and get a more important view of the social aspects of the different buyers that we're working with. So we have a whole bunch of tools that we were enabled to go and test out this year. LinkedIn Sales Navigator, Twitter, IBIS World from the standpoint of industry relationships and understanding, Zoom Info. We use, of course, XIQ. But we also use Hoovers. Hoovers is really understanding through its optimizer capabilities. Okay. We use a program called Reference Edge because it's AI driven about who's going to refer us and be a good advocate for us. And then we use another tool, which is called our FPIO, and that is artificial intelligence driven, which looks at our requests for proposals. It uses intelligence to tear them apart, shred them, and then it allows us to build a proposal based on that intelligence. So we're really relying upon these tools in our CAM journey to make us more successful.
And do you have a tool, Michael, that you can use to kind of roll all of that up, or do you have to go into, I don't know, we name 7 or 8 different systems and tools to kind of figure out the answer, or do you have something that you're like, does the, DemandFarm or whoever it is, are you able to collate parts, big chunks of that to make it more useful?
We are trying to do that. So we use CRM as our platform, and all of the tools that I mentioned have been integrated into Salesforce as tabs in the different objects. So if we're in an account object, we have a tab for the account planner, and we have a tab for the proposal generator that we have. So we integrate them there. And we also go a step further where we have field level integration. So DemandFarm is really cool with, if we fill in a field in our contact form, DemandFarm has the ability to update that field in the DemandFarm account planner. But if we update that field in the account planner, it also updates in the contact form. So we don't have to do anything twice, which is fantastic. So we have taken a lot of time to integrate at the field level and also at the application levels to make our CRM a CRM. Remember, we had that as a goal at the end, at the beginning of the year, make our CRM a CRM.
Yeah, yeah. So incidentally, Michael, in fact, I think a couple of weeks ago, in fact, we were with Forrester in a call, and then one of the things that they were advising us was like what they call it, the connected app ecosystem. So there are plenty of apps out there, and then each one of them having probably a little bit, how can we use those multiple data points in multiple applications and then bring all of them preferably into Salesforce and then into DemandFarm at the right context, not just the tab or whatever, make it contextual and maybe even conversational, right? So I guess that is the key for our product vision. I mean, that's what they're very insightful from Forrester just 2 weeks ago, I think, Gregg. So yeah, I mean, thanks, Josh, for bringing that up. Actually, it's just not the too many tools might kind of confuse. So how do I make sense of the data coming in and then make it so much more easier for somebody to consume that insight from the data? So
yeah. So Joshua, don't get me wrong. We still have a problem with too many tools and too many URLs because we just kind of exploded into these tools. But we're working really hard on not overwhelming our sellers with too many places to go. We're not there yet, but we're working really hard towards that end.
That's great.
Yeah. So so coming to the so I think looking at I find this exercise wherein you want to make a wild prediction or wild dream or wild wish that you have. If all the technologies together in the world can do this one thing for my key account management or for my key account manager or whatever that, right? So, and then I've seen a lot of them become real, some in 1 year, some maybe 8 years, but they become real eventually. So I'm very curious to get those 1 or 2, what is that wild wish that each one of you might have that you think you or your account managers would wish for? Josh, let's start for you.
Yeah, so for me, I've got a longer list than 2, but I'll just kind of pick my.
Yeah. Go on. I mean, more the merrier.
They happen to be my pain points at the moment. So, I think having better data around onboarding of new talent as well as customers and understanding, the timing and the tasks and, really building out what's world-class. I think we have, we spend a lot of time and energy thinking about how to onboard people and getting them through that process as quickly and effectively as possible. But one of those lessons learned is typically a very subjective conversation. I'd like to have a lot more objective evidence around, if somebody is at this point by this day, then this is the trajectory they're on. And if they're not, what can we do to kind of change that trajectory? I think that would take some time.
When you mean onboarding people, I think, is it the people at the customer side or people of your team or both?
Yeah, so it's both. One time right now, we're a hyper growth company. So for us, it's our own people right now that I'm referring to the most. Is bringing people up to speed as quickly and effectively as possible. Because I think, if we can shave off time, that's great for us. It's great for our customers. And also, if we can make people more effective faster, then I think it's great for them. From a customer standpoint, I think you can use the exact same tool to plug in the data around customer onboarding, and from a customer success standpoint, be able to determine, based on this set of criteria and where we are in the customer journey, what that's going to look like. And you can almost be able to predict churn. We're selling licenses for the most part, and we sell services and stuff as well. But our license structure is, somebody buys 50 licenses. It'd be great to know that 3 months in, their adoption point is kind of here, which means that in 9 more months, it's going to be here. So we can actually get ahead of that and make some changes and kind of course correct. So really is sharing best practice is such an important thing, I think, to any business. But if we could use technology to do that better and AI to do that better, I think that would be a huge lift for us as an organization. It would allow us to provide a better world-class service to our customers. The other thing for me is really around quota setting and forecasting. Understand, I think it's probably because we're at that time of year, but understanding, kind of looking at historical data, looking at customers, being able to go into social media, for instance, and see what customers are saying and what they're doing and what projects they're winning. If you had a way to kind of collate all of that objectively and determine what that might mean for next year and the following year and the following year, as a publicly traded company, that kind of stuff's important to us, being able to predict effectively. And I think having better AI to do that, not that we would just plug and play, we would obviously apply some sort of, knowledge to that information. But I think being able to have that at our fingertips would be incredibly useful. And then you could spend a lot less time, guessing, trying to guess about what the future looks like, and a lot more time analyzing the data that, it is pretty objective. And I think that would be very useful for us. Those are kind of 2 of my top 12 things I'd like to have.
Thank you, Josh, for that. So, Michael, so what are some of the things that you wish for, dream for?
Well, first of all, Joshua, your list was excellent. We have the same wish list that you've just mentioned as well. So maybe that's common across all of us that are selling consultatively in these larger, complex projects. One of the things that I would put on my wish list is this idea of AI aggregators. And there are some out there. So for example, I'd like to be able to go out and search for AI for this and have it come back with a bunch of companies that have a standard tool set that I can plug into Salesforce that does AI for that, AI for forecasting, AI for timeline management of a complex engineered solution, those types of things. With the current state of AI, I can find those things. Like I can go to Salesforce and I can get AI for customer interactions, if you want to call it that, or sentiment analysis. I can find those things. But at the back end, in order to train it and in order to connect data to it, it's very hard. And so it becomes an expensive proposition. If AI aggregators were out there with their own data sets that they could bring answers to and allow us to almost use keywords to filter that, that would be so nice because we could work so fast. That's one thing. The very tactical one is we use lead scoring for a lot of our campaign management and then developing leads into opportunities. Lead scoring isn't very well done. I mean, it's done well enough based on the technologies that we're using, which are marketing kinds of applications, but it really relies on the customer's interaction with our campaigns, the customer's interaction with lots of different things, inbounds and those. It would be really nice to be able to rank buyers based on more data. Are they buying from my competitor? Are they buying a service that is adjunct to my service? I don't know if that information is out there, but if we could do rankings based on more than just our internal campaigns and interactions, that would be really helpful. So those are two of my 12, Josh. And yours are on my list. So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
So yeah, thank you, Maggie. So Rick, I think you talked to a lot of customers, lot of CROs, and then what is it that you think the developers of tools you wish that they had made it today, or they will make it soon?
Yeah, as a former CRO myself, I'm sure part of my desire is clouded from recent experience, but I'll pick up on some themes. Maybe I'll use some different words. My number one is orchestrating signals, and that is getting all of that data in one place, make it accurate, make it complete, but make it convenient. And Michael picked up on a lot of those threads. There's a lot of tools and there's an ecosystem, and it gets complicated very quickly. So simplifying signal orchestration and getting it in there. I'm also glad that during the webinar, the industry talks so much about intent data, and we lose sight of sentiment data. And I'm glad that we threw that out there here on the webinar today, because when you're managing really large, complex enterprise accounts, intent sort of starts to weed off, and you really need to understand sentiment and relationships and mapping those and understanding those to make progress. So that's a big thing. So signal orchestration is my number one. My number two is something I blog about and talk about regularly with tech companies, and that is the algorithm around regression analysis. This is really important to me. When I meet with tech companies, what I often find is, we have a great engine for understanding buyer intent or engagement, or we have a great engine for understanding selling behaviors and conversational intelligence and things like that. And I always ask, well, are you bringing the buying signals together with the selling signals? Most of the time, the answer is no. We're just sort of focused on one or the other. So the algorithm needs to tell you why you win and why you lose. And it needs to be able to take your customer signals and your selling organization signals and bring them together, tie them to closed won or closed loss deals, and be able to give you some composite. It's complex because the variables are many, but it needs to be able to at least tell you, why are we winning and why are we losing? Because you can use those insights and go back into your engagement model with key accounts and improve it and update it so that you can improve your win rates as you go through. Very important. And then lastly, I would say on my list, a recommendation engine for sellers. Like, there's going to be all this complexity behind the scenes, and our key account managers don't understand that. They don't even probably want to mess with it. They just tell me what I need to keep this account, to upsell or cross-sell, to keep my customer really happy. So taking a recommendation engine at the right time, contextually appropriate, giving your key account managers prompts, tips, recommendations on what to do, when, and how with customers is key. And then if I could throw in one little bonus on top of my top three, would be a platform that built in these moments of surprise and delight for current customers. Like, if your customer experiences something positive and unexpected that had meaning or value to them in ways that, maybe we would have not seen from a human perspective, really key. And I think the data will help us better serve customers with experiences. So that would be my bonus on top of it.
Right.
Rick, I like one of the things, one of the things you said, which was timeliness of information for the sellers to be able to provide the right information. We deal with that with a company called HighSpot, and we've integrated HighSpot into Salesforce, and we use fields to kick off content and bring it to the attention of the sellers. So if we're at a different stage of the sales process and they're in an industry and they have certain other parameters, we use those fields and we kick up something in front of them that says, show this now, or you need to know this right now. And that's been really helpful for us from the standpoint of just-in-time content.
Very interesting. Yeah. So I think we need to close this. I think I didn't even realize that we're close to an hour, almost close to an hour that we started off with. This has been really overwhelming for me personally, in terms of learning. So this is always a question that kept bothering me, right? So how do we make this? There's so much of data. I mean, the data is getting collected really, but how do we make sense? So if I were to consolidate everything that I've heard today, plus with a lot of our customers where the data getting collected. So I was able to put them into three kinds of data. That is, I mean, I could be wrong, just an attempt on this. So one, of course, is all the buyer's digital interactions that seller might not completely be aware of, right? These are things like searches or something like intent. They just have a hunch, right? The searches they're doing, the research that they're doing, and then the intent they might or might not have, and then so on. So it's basically mostly the buyer-led interactions, which we might have a little bit knowledge about, not too much. The second set of data that we need to deal with is the lot of seller-buyer actual interaction that happens through your meetings, through your through the emails that happen, and then there's a lot of data that's out there where we pretty much know what that data is. We have a good control over that interaction. And then the third one is slightly more deeper level of data. Once someone like start using DemandFarm, tool like DemandFarm, then you'll have a much deeper data in terms of, say, last 2 years account plans, or last 3 years account plans. So, and then which one did meet the plan, which one did not meet the plan, and what the finer points of it, right? So that's a much deeper level of data. There's data on opportunities, or data on, say, when we try to superimpose like 100 org charts of all my accounts, is there a trend that comes out based on industry, based on geography, based on something like that, right? So when we look at all the white spaces of last 3 years and so on. So that's a much, the quantity won't be too much in terms of activities and then meetings, etc., but it will be substantial enough for us. So if you're able to put those three types of data and make them, I mean, if somehow there's a magic, and then so I'm able to make sense of it, make trend of it, and then making one use the other, etc., and then really make account managers so much more powerful, I think we'll do a great justice in the next couple of quarters, couple of years, as all of us as tool makers and practitioners. So that was my final comment. Thank you so much, Michael, Josh, and then Rick, for your insights on this. It's really a pleasure talking to you all on this subject. And we'll keep talking about it, at least for next 2 to 3 years, I guess, till such time that we really make a difference to an account manager's life. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.